Hey guys, it's Dane from Scoggin-Dickey Parts Center. We're back in the dyno cell once again for a wonderful camshaft comparison. This shootout is going to be a little bit different. Y'all have been in here with us before for big blocks, small blocks, LS, LT, even a V6, and yet this time we're kind of deviating from the GM family and jumping into something else that we've been working on for a while, and this is with our Mopar Performance 5.7 Hemi. This has been a collaborative effort between us here at Scoggin-Dickey Parts Center as well as at the Mopar warehouse. So we have Jesse, we have Kurt, we have Gordon. All of those guys together in the performance world are, working hard on getting all this stuff taken care of. They've gone through with camshaft selection, as well as we're going to be tearing this down, locking out the phaser, as well as changing valve springs and other odds and ends that we'll list during the video as well. Also we have Nick Payne behind the camera, and of course you got me. So we've got quite a few cams to change out as far as this is concerned today, so we've got a very long day ahead of us. So hopefully you stick with us. This is going to be really exciting, and we're looking forward to the results. So we're going to go ahead and do a baseline, and then we'll get back to it. Okay, so we've already done the baseline. It's done 383 horsepower and 424 pound-feet of torque. We've got our stage 1 cam in right now. We've got the specs down at the bottom of the video, of course, or maybe it's up top. Either which way, we'll figure that out after. But of course, one other thing to cover is that the 5.7 from Mopar, these crate motors, they don't have the MDS system in them, so we didn't have to go through and do all that mess. So we just had to go through and do the cam install. It's still kind of a lengthy process because we still had to do the valve springs. So we've got the stage 1 in right now. It sounds really good, even just at a regular idle. And so we're going to go ahead and do a few pulls on this one, see what we make, and then we'll kind of circle back around to the next one before we do our stage 2. Okay, so we just finished doing our stage 1 cam with those dyno pulls, and the results were really neat. We found that down low, around 2,000 to 2,500 RPM, you'll even see it on the chart whenever we do the pull, is that we didn't really lose anything on torque. So for you guys that are wanting to do a camshaft but not also have to do a torque converter, for you automatic guys, this is a pretty nice setup because there was no real deviation as far as torque is concerned. So for y'all that are just going to be going ahead and doing a crate motor or already assembling something yourselves, that's not going to be too much of an issue, because you're going to have to be considering a torque converter anyway, unless you guys like manual transmissions. So what's really nice is this one The stage 1 cam, okay, we're going to go back over the specs a little bit. It's a 213 intake duration and 219 degrees exhaust. It's a 0.587 lift and on the intake and the exhaust. So it's pretty balanced overall. It's 112 degrees LSA, and so the numbers on this one as far as the gains, so baseline was 383 horsepower and 424 pound-feet of torque, which was pretty nice and healthy for just the stock setup. The camshaft, of course, for the stock setup seems to be the, I guess, limiting factor initially. So our horsepower, after everything was said and done, at peak was 464 horsepower and 462 pound-feet of torque. That's really nice. But even better is, if you'll pay attention to the graph, is that at the very, very end, it actually picks up a lot of power. So instead of just nosing over at 5,000 RPM, it actually was managing to loft and carry that power all the way to 6,500 RPM. And so it picked up right around 130, 140 horsepower over the stock cam at 6,500 RPM. And so you'll see how flat it is across there. So that way, when you're running it to a red line and you go in between the shifts, you're not going to, fall off off the plateau and have to climb back out of the hole as far as power is concerned. So this is a really cool camshaft. We're really excited to see what our next camshaft will be able to do. We're going to get this thing nice and cooled down. So stay tuned. We can't wait to see what this next one does. Okay, so we just finished doing the dyno run for the El Chapo camshaft, which is an intermediate cam between our stage 1 and stage 2 camshafts. It's, of course, I mean, the name kind of says it, it's a choppier camshaft, so you get that really good aggressive idle quality out of it. So still, you don't really give up anything as far as performance. This one outperforms the stage 1 camshaft pretty well. So jumping from, the stage 1 to the El Chapo setup, the duration is 215 degrees on the intake and 221 degrees on the exhaust. And so lift, we kept it at the same. It is 587 lift on intake and exhaust, but of course we tightened up the LSA. So we went from 112 degrees on the lobe separation down to 108 degrees. Still, power was good. We jumped from 464 horsepower to 475 horsepower, and then 462 pound-feet of torque. We lost just a smidge. It was 461 pound-feet at the peak, but it still wasn't such a huge change down low where you might have needed a larger torque converter or anything really to make up for anything as far as lost torque down low. So overall, really good promising results on this one. Gordon is in the process of taking this one out, and then we're going to go ahead and put the stage 2 camshaft in there, and let's see what the numbers make. Hi. So we just finished up the stage 2 camshaft. It is a little bit more aggressive on the duration than the stage 1 cam, but we still managed to pick up some really good horsepower. So The duration on this one is 218 degrees on the intake and 225 degrees on the exhaust. Stage 1 was 213 and 219, if you guys can remember that one. And the lift is still the same. So 587 on the intake and exhaust. And we kept the lobe separation the same at 112 degrees. And yet, we still managed to pick up power, like I said, 490 horsepower and 466 pound-feet of torque. So we got a 26 horsepower gain and then, 4 pound-feet of torque. And yet this one was still managing to carry it all the way across to redline at 6,500 RPM. This one is actually a pretty nice little cam. We're kind of surprised as far as, what you've got down low. We believe that, we didn't really do a whole lot of calibration down low, trying to add any timing or anything else like that. And we think that, I was talking with Kurt that, if you spend some quality time on this camshaft, you'll be able to make some pretty good torque down low. You might be able to pull off doing this cam without having to do a torque converter as well, or at least a higher stall torque converter. So that being said, this one's going to get cooled down and we're going to go ahead and install the stage 3 camshaft along with maybe a special treat after that to test out what happens when you go from the 5.7 intake to the 6.4 intake. So there's a lot of gains, or at least the internet says that there's gains or anything else along those lines, but we would like to be able to get some data on it just that way that we can at least give y'all the most information possible for whenever you're doing your part selection on your build. So without further ado, we're going to go out here and I'm going to let the guys come in here and do the stage 3 cam install, and we're excited. It's going to be fun. So I'm looking forward to it. This has been a really fun experience, at least getting to see something a little bit different on the dyno, and this thing has made some really good sounds and some pretty healthy power. We're just that close to 500 at the crank, and so we figure that we'll probably be seeing that with this, at least with this cam, especially after putting on the 6.4 intake. Okay, as you can tell, we went through quite a variety of combinations on this last cam setup. as you can see in front of me, we've got the Holley Sniper intake, but we're going to go ahead and step back all the way to just the stage 3 camshaft and then kind of work our way back to up here. So the stage 3 camshaft with the 5.7 Hemi intake, that one did 498 horsepower and 476 pound-feet of torque, which is really good. We were kind of sad that it didn't quite make it over the 500 horsepower mark. And so we, of course, were going to go ahead and try the 6.4 intake. And so Gordon graciously allowed us to use that one. And in that dyno pull, it did well, but it did not actually have any gains overall compared to the stock intake. I mean, overall is like our numbers, it was 492 horsepower and 469 pound-feet of torque. So also we were having to, run the short runner and the long runner, and we just didn't really see any actual, positive gains on that one whatsoever. And we're thinking that really on an engine like this with that aggressive of a camshaft, it just really was statistically just insignificant as far as running that type of intake manifold. We think probably, on the lower end for a mostly stock 5.7 or even with a very mild cam, you might be able to see some gains. But up at this upper level, especially with the stage 3 camshaft, it's a little bit more intense. And so at that, we decided, you know what, we're going to go ahead and run this Holley Sniper intake manifold. And so we went ahead and installed this one, and it made 510 horsepower and 435 pound-feet of torque. So that's really kind of an interesting shift, but of course we lost a lot of torque all the way across the board, and the horsepower gain was really only over 6,000 RPM. So for you street guys, that's really not going to be much of an improvement or even really helpful whatsoever. And so we decided also to test to see if just the stock throttle body was a limitation on that. And because this Holley Sniper has a dual bolt pattern design, we slapped on a Hellcat throttle body and made some more pulls. And that was within 2 horsepower of each other on the 5.7 throttle body versus the Hellcat. So really, if you're going to be doing this and going for a pretty good healthy cam, even the stock 5.7 intake manifold is going to be sufficient for most of y'all. If you start deciding to go with something with a really high aggressive stall and something that maybe not an actual full-bodied Charger or Challenger, this might be something that you might try to consider. But of course, we have the numbers out there for y'all to be able to see, to be able to make your own comparisons. We'll have all the parts listed below our videos for everything that we used within the dyno video itself, whether it be the intake manifolds, throttle bodies, all of our camshafts that we have in our selection, including some of the other components to make your swap or installation, just a little bit easier. One thing to be noted, that of course you do have to tune on all of this stuff. You have to change the calibration when you're doing any cam installs or MDS deletes, all of that stuff. You're going to have to actually, have a tune performed for that. So either you feel froggy and you decide that you're going to do it yourself, or you need to find a tuner to be able to do it for you. Make sure you do that homework before you start doing the wrenching, because you don't want to get, kind of over a barrel whenever it comes down to actually getting all this stuff done, and then you don't have anybody that's able to actually tune it so you can really enjoy your ride. This one, we ran a Holley Dominator ECU. It just makes things easier because we don't have to do with neural network or anything along those lines. And so we didn't do anything with the stock PCM. This is all just its own Holley setup. And so it was really nice because all the wiring and everything was relatively plug and play. And we were able to get this thing on here and start running it on the dyno in really a short amount of time. So if you guys have any other questions, feel free to reach out, message us in the video, leave comments. We'd love to hear about it. We'd also love to see, what you guys install these cams into. We'd love to hear the videos. We'd love to see the idle, also any track times or anything else like that. We'd love to hear some feedback on it. So once again, thanks for coming by and watching one of our videos on a really cool camshaft shootout. And we will see you guys next time for another fun video.